collective impact for greater good, ensuring all students have access to arts education, right? So this is a panel that's going to solve everything. I'm very excited. All right, so please join me in welcoming Ayanna Hudson, who's the Director of Arts Education for the National Endowment for the Arts, Yesenia Herrington, who's working in Austin, Myran Parker-Brass, who's working in Boston, and Lara Davis, who's working from in the city of Seattle. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage. You gotta walk fast, the audience is gonna run out of applause. Keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. All right. Woo-hoo. Ayanna.
Hello. How are you guys? Excellent.
Ayanna got in at 2 a.m. You can do better than that for me.
Yes. Yeah, I was telling Jamie I almost didn't make it here. My flight was canceled. Finally got on a flight, got here at 2 a.m. So I am thrilled to see you guys. So hello. Yay. So as Jamie mentioned, Ayanna Hudson, I'm the Director of Arts Education at the National Endowment for the Arts, and I am so thrilled and pleased to be here representing the NEA, America's chief funder and supportive of the arts. And I'm trying to advance my slide. There we go.
There you go.
So I want to start my brief remarks by sharing with you all that I have such an inner passion, such a drive to make a positive impact on the world and specifically the lives of students. And by the time I was 17, I had realized that my mission in life was to single-handedly change the world. And of course, at the ripe age of 17, I had it all figured out. So after getting a graduate degree in education focused on youth at risk and the development of prevention programs, I was single-handedly ready to solve every single underlying issue associated with youth engaging in risky behavior and to prevent that behavior from occurring in the first place. And this is true. I remember thinking, not if, but when I solve every issue for every student in this country, I won't have a job anymore. But I was 17. What did I know, right? If only I'd understood the power of collaborative networks, and we'll dive into that momentarily. So my first job out of graduate school was working at a place called Georgia Cities and Schools, and this was a state-level collaboration made up of the heads of all the major state agencies in Georgia, and they had come together to support the governor's alternative schools program called Crossroads. And my organization was tasked with helping these schools to be successful, to build their capacity. And I was tasked with coordinating artist residencies. I didn't have a background in the arts. I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I figured it out. I found some artists. We placed artists in pilot schools across the state of Georgia. And from that experience, I saw firsthand the power of the arts to ignite a love of learning and a love of life for students who were primarily transitioning in and out of the juvenile justice system, for students who had been expelled. And I thought to myself, if arts education had such a tremendous impact on students who had been expelled from school, then I was going to dedicate my life to ensuring every single student in this country would have access to an arts education. Thank you. Yes. So after spending some time at Georgia Cities and Schools, I moved on to the Fulton County Arts Council. And I worked on something called the Youth Arts Development Project. And this was a collaboration among the NEA, my agency, 2 other local arts agencies, Americans for the Arts, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And along with our juvenile court partners, we came together to measure the impact of youth arts programming and reducing those behaviors associated with a youth engaging in risky behavior and ultimately contact with the juvenile justice system. And after leaving Fulton County, I moved on to the Los Angeles County Arts Commission, and for 10 years I had the honor of leading a very diverse cross-sector partnership comprised of over 100 members working together to restore dance, music, theater, visual arts, and media arts education across the 81 school districts in Los Angeles County. And I share all that because as I reflect on my own personal story and journey in arts education, I realize that there is a through line between all of my experiences. A profound belief in changing the world through the arts, a fierce dedication to ensuring every single student has access to an arts education. The biggest, probably, the realization that I can't change the world single-handedly by myself, and a deep, deep understanding of the power of collaborative networks. And working with diverse partners from different sectors to address those big, hairy, audacious, wicked problems, those problems that are not easily solved because of unclear solutions, because of a very complex web of impediments, some that you know, some that you don't know, the problems that are way too big to solve by yourself in isolation, the challenges that require us to think strategically, to think big, and to think bold. And at the NEA, we've challenged ourselves with a really big, bold vision to ensure every student is engaged and empowered through an excellent arts education. And that is a big, complex, intertwined problem that I spend literally every moment of my life thinking about how to address. And it's especially imperative because we know from a U.S. Department of Education report that kids attending high poverty schools have significantly less access to arts education. So how do you even begin to think about how to solve this type of problem? So there's an extremely powerful framework out there called collective impact. And it is a framework that we're thinking a lot about how this framework can help us solve our problem of equitable access to arts education. And I put this up here because I'm sure many of you have heard the buzz about collective impact. It's a really popular term right now, and you might have heard that it's a joint effort, or you might have heard it's just a collaboration or just a partnership. But collective impact is really, really different. It's an entirely different way of addressing those complex, challenging issues, and for us, equitable access to arts education for all students. So I want to spend just a little bit of time moving away from the buzz and talking about what it really is. So John Kania and Mark Kramer from FSG Consultants describe collective impact as a diverse set of organizations abandoning an individual agenda in favor of a structured collective approach to fundamentally change systems. And collective impact initiatives involve 5 conditions that come together in alignment and produce powerful results. So the first is a common agenda, diverse partners working together to create a shared vision to a defined problem. The second, shared measurement. So this is an evaluation system that measures the progress of each partner's work, working towards the common goals. Reinforcing activities, diverse partners developing and implementing a shared plan. So this is really each partner taking on a different piece of the plan based on their unique skills. Continuous communication, establishing trust and sharing results consistently. And backbone support, dedicated staff that coordinates the work to move it forward. Collective impact is such a powerful tool, and it's one of the reasons why it's so powerful, because it so effectively weaves arts education into the fabric of a community and into the fabric of a school district. So in times of budget crisis, cutting arts education simply is not an option. So the theme of our conference is Ignite Action. So I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about some practical tools and resources. Now that we've talked about what it is, Let's spend a little bit of time talking about how you can do it and what are some of those tools and resources that you can take back home to your own communities as you think about learning more about this framework. So there's a free resource, collectiveimpactforum.org, and this is an online tool that was established to really centralize access to any and everything you would want to know about collective impact, both for new initiatives, established initiatives, and literally everything in between. So I hope you take a moment to explore this site. And if you are interested in starting and embarking down this road of collective impact, there's great information and tools to help you better understand what it is and to help you lay a foundation for success. And you'll see on here, there's videos, there's webinars, and other resources that you can access. Again, all free. One of the things that we know about collective impact is that it can be customized to your local community, and that's another reason why it's a really powerful tool. And this work evolves and progresses over time. And the team at FSG has documented this work and really talk about it as it's not a linear roadmap, but it's really a guide to help you think about the various stages of the work. And I want to spend just a very brief moment talking about and thinking about some of the activities under Phase 1 pre-launch as you begin to think about almost, if you will, readiness factors to engage in this work. Identifying the presence of influential champions, something super important to think about. Are there individuals in your community that can rally partners and provide leadership? Identifying resources for planning. Is funding available for staff? Is staff in place to embark on a shared visioning process? Is there funding to embark on a shared visioning process? To collect data, to analyze data, to plan? Determine if there's an urgency to address the issue in a new way. Is your community fed up with the current state of affairs around arts education? Some kids getting access, some kids not getting access, and again, mostly the kids in high poverty schools not getting access to arts education. Another resource that I want to mention, on the NEA's website at arts.gov, we have a series of 4 webinars that we've archived. One of the webinars is a conversation with John Kania, who I mentioned earlier from FSG. And it's a conversation between us talking about what collective impact is, how you do it, and what are some of the key lessons learned in doing this work. And a second conversation is with me and a gentleman named Rich Harwood, who's president of the Harwood Institute, really talking about how you put community at the center of collective impact. The collective impact isn't something that's done to a community. In order for it to be effective, community has a voice at the table. So that's a really interesting conversation between me and Rich. I mentioned earlier the NEA's vision. Every student engaged and empowered through an excellent arts education. And to achieve that vision, we have a comprehensive funding strategy. We're providing grants for direct learning opportunities for students to develop knowledge and skills in the arts, professional development grants for the adults that support students, teaching artists, classroom teachers, principals, for them to develop knowledge and skills in the arts and to develop their own leadership capacity in the arts. And we're also providing now grants to support the systems that serve students, so our collective impact grants. So we're now funding projects all across the country, both those that are starting this work, who are bringing cross-sector partners together, gathering data, analyzing data, developing plans, as well as those initiatives that are more established, our sustaining grants. And our guidelines are available at arts.gov. And to date, the NEA has invested $1.4 million, this is since 2015, in 19 collective impact projects all across the country. And you'll see them, the yellow diamonds listed here on the screen. And for us, these are much bigger grants, given that these grants are leveraging systemic change across entire communities or entire school districts. So for our emerging projects, those new projects just getting off the ground, those grants are averaging about $50,000. And for a sustaining project, those that are established, that have a plan in place, and the NEA is helping to move forward key priorities in a long-range plan, those are around $100,000. And we're funding in communities that are large, that are small, urban, rural, as well as suburban. And I mentioned before that this work really has different phases and evolves and progresses over time. And I'm proud to be joined by esteemed colleagues in Austin, Boston, and Seattle who are going to talk about their collective impact work, how they're using this framework to advance arts education in their own communities, as well as the different stages of their work. And before I turn it over to them, I want to leave you just with some final thoughts and some big ideas to think about in regards to collective impact. What we know is that there is a strong correlation between leadership, highly effective, strong leadership, and successful collective impact initiatives. We know that equity and access to opportunity has to ground this work. We know that data drives action and improvement, and are you using data as a flashlight or as a hammer? I mentioned before about authentic community-wide inclusion. That is a must. Community ownership of this work is a must. Communities that are being impacted must have a voice at the table. Getting systems to change is a process that cannot be fast-tracked. And finally, partnership moves at the speed of trust. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I look forward to engaging in conversation with you.
Fantastic. So I think maybe my favorite slide was the B. I love that buzz slide. And so Myran, I want to start with you, right? So there is this buzzy new word, and FSG has established a framework, and shiny, happy consultants, have put this all together, and no one was working in this way before that word was invented, right? You guys certainly weren't.
No, we weren't. Yeah, but we are now.
But you are now. So talk a little bit about what it meant to work in this way before this framework, and what this framework helped and what it added to you and to the work that you guys are doing.
Good morning. So in 2008 in Boston, forces aligned that allowed us to begin our public-private partnership, which we call the Bps Arts Expansion. And those forces were a new superintendent came to town who was committed to all children having access to quality arts education. And not only did she advocate for that with all of our principals and headmasters, but she also each year made sure that there were dollars in the budget to continue to increase those arts positions for certified teachers. The other side of that force was our philanthropic community. Our philanthropic community, our local foundations and family funds had been for many years funding arts organizations who were, for many reasons, they were funding arts organizations who were the arts programs in our buildings. And so they wanted at that point to understand how to have a deeper relationship with the schools, how those arts organizations could begin to build out programs that not only benefited our students, but also benefited their growing, and really together how we could build back quality sequential arts education for Boston Public School students. And so thus the BPS Arts Expansion took off. We had 3 strategies. One was certainly to build quality sequential arts education for every student in BPS. The second was to build out that space of support, so inside Central District, to make sure that our arts teachers had the same support that their colleagues in ELA and math and science and social studies had. So a space that allowed them to have professional development that was targeted at who they were as arts educators, best practice curriculum and materials that supported the work that they were doing in their schools, support in that evaluation space, because now teachers are being evaluated just a little differently, and so how do we support our teachers with that work? And then just providing them a network, because for many of our teachers, they were the lone wolf in the building. So who's your colleague to brainstorm with? Who do you talk to when you have an idea? And so central office became that base of support. And then our third was to continue to build those relationships with all of those arts organizations who had been doing wonderful work in our buildings, who had been providing, in some instances, the arts education. How did we continue to have them be that very strong partner and be that enhancement to what now all of our new arts educators were going to be doing? And so that we were both pushing those skills. We were moving our students from novice to mastery level. So we are now 7, almost 8 years into this process. And when we started, in my K-8 schools, about 63% of my students were having any kind of arts education, maybe once a week. This year, 97% 60% of my K through 8 students have arts education 2 times a week, most of them, and most of my schools offer 2 disciplines.
Do those numbers one more time. What
Sure.
the change was from what to what? I just want to underscore this for
Sure.
everyone.
In 2008, 63% of my K through 8s had any arts education, and this year 97% have at least weekly, and many of them more. I think a more impactful percentage is my high schools. So in 2008, only a quarter of my high school students had any access to arts education. And this year, 67% of them have quality arts education. I have 150 more teachers. And so in Boston, I'm a pretty small district if you compare me to Chicago and New York, et cetera. I have 128 schools. I have 58,000 students. When we started this process, I had 120 arts educators across every discipline serving 128 schools. So that meant somebody was not getting arts education. This year we have 350 arts educators. And so that commitment comes from the district. We also have 70 arts organizations who are full-year partners in our buildings. And so that means they have planned with the school, they are working there for the entire year. They're teaching artists, and our teachers are working together to build those skills. And every year we build that process out. We've had a wonderful partnership with our philanthropic community. We have an intermediary who works with that population. Ed Vesters becomes the holder, if you will, of those philanthropic funds that are granted through a competitive process to arts education. We have all of our community arts organizations who are committed to working with our students and our schools. But we have our district. We have our district, which from the top is committed. We are a site-based managed school district, so that means my principals and headmasters are responsible for hiring their teachers. And so they now own this process. So I still do my advocate dance, and I don't think I ever want to stop doing that dance. But I don't have to convince them anymore. They understand the importance of arts education in the scheme of student achievement, in the culture changing of their building, and providing those skills for all of our students. So we've made some wonderful success that way. We've benchmarked success by the number of teachers who now are moving into that master level space. Teachers who now are part of that ongoing conversation in their buildings about how the arts support learning and what we can do together, both as that core arts, but also as that arts partner. And I think Ayanna was saying about budgets, and when you're in that budget conversation, I think one benchmark for success that I'm very excited about this year is that we are in a very tough budget year, like most urban districts. We have about $50 million deficit in the school department, and we just finished our staff negotiations with our schools. And so I'm very happy to say that I didn't lose any arts teachers this year. Wow. And you know that when you cut arts teachers. So we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about being that critical partner. We've learned a lot about collaborating with the broader Boston community. We've learned a lot about pushing that level of connection. We have a new superintendent this year who, because of the work we've done, remains committed to arts education. Mm-hmm. We have a new mayor after 20 years. 2 years ago, we got a new mayor. And the mayor also is committed to arts education. He, for the first time, is creating for the city of Boston a cultural plan. And arts education will be a very big part of that cultural plan. And so we continue to, I think, to build this process of our collective impact and who those partners are, how those partners are working together, and our common agenda.
That's awesome. Thank you, and congratulations on all that. Yesenia, let me come to you next to lift up a piece that Myran touched on and Ayanna touched on, which is in order for collective impact to work, you need consistency. You need a group of organizations, you need a shared agenda, you need time, you need commonality. We're all talking about work in systems that change a lot. Mm-hmm. Elected leaders change, appointed leaders change. There's a churn built into that, and then there's a natural churn. How do you work in this way in that environment? What are the pros? What are the cons? How does it work?
Well, I think the reality of the situation is when you're coming from a community where leadership changes, the advocacy never stops. The flow of information needs to continue, because as you get new superintendents from a school district, as you get new leadership, with the mayor's office, you need to continue to inform people. In Austin, every single day, 1,000 people are coming to move. We've got tech sectors from San Francisco that are having headquarters in Austin, Texas. So as they come in, something that's been really pivotal in our collective impact is to ensure that we're communicating to those folks that are coming into community the value of arts education. Our collective impact model is the Creative Learning Initiative. And as we think about continuing the continuity of what we're doing, it's very important that we continue to have those conversations, continue to inform our community, new people that are coming in, about the value of arts education. Some highlights from the data that we recently received were that teachers who were interested in creative teaching, and for us that's really integrating arts across the curriculum, science, social studies, math, English, for these teachers that had proficiency in facilitating the strategies, their students performed 3 times higher on our state standardized reading and science. And so this year, we wanted to communicate that data and also offer a specialized series of workshops dedicated to teachers to lift all subject areas. Because we know that if there's interest, and if we provide the access and the equity to those teachers, that the student achievement will follow. And so for us, it's been really important to continue those conversations. You can never leave those conversations off the table or assume that you're talking to somebody in your community that they know about the history. Know your history, know how you got started, because the collective impact model affects all of us. And it's really important for our community to continue to bridge those information gaps and to really let others know the value of the work that we're doing.
That's awesome. And just by way of comparison, what's the size of the Austin School District?
So it's very similar to Boston.
Right.
We have about 84,000 students in our school district. We have 129 schools. And in the Austin School District, every elementary student receives music and visual arts every 3rd day for 45 minutes. So they're getting 2 art forms. In our collective impact model, we wanted to increase that offering. And so in elementary schools, we offer theater and dance as the other 2 sequential fine arts. And so that's something that we're bridging every single year. And the district, our superintendent, our board of trustees has been extremely positive. So like you, we have added fine arts instructors every single year for the past 3 years, which is phenomenal. We also have job-embedded coaches that prepare teachers to implement these creative teaching strategies across the curriculum. So the resources are there, the commitment is there. It's not just saying we are committed, they are demonstrating they are by putting resources in teachers, by putting resources for students. And that's really the beauty of the work.
And will you just say a word about what a job-embedded coach is?
Yes. So in our system, we've created, our vision is to have every single student in Austin ISD have access to an arts-rich education. And when we started this work 6 years ago, the community was really excited. They had been giving a lot of money to arts organizations, but it had never been in a structure. And so the structure that we developed, we had very key partnerships in doing this with our community arts team. MindPop, a nonprofit arts organization, is our main hub. We got designated as a Kennedy Center, Any Given Child site in 2011. And so working closely with MindPop, they are the managing arts partner for the arts organizations in Austin. That relationship has been crucial. Because of that, we gather quarterly meetings with all of our arts organizations and our academic supervisors at the district. And so we have conversations about where are students struggling the most? Where do they need help? How can the arts organizations in our community that are developing programming for our students help to fill in that gap? The district has afforded us the luxury of having coaches, instructional coaches, to support teachers by integrating these strategies that they're learning across the curriculum, creative teaching. And so it's not like we're doing professional development with teachers, twice a year and saying, bye, have fun. We're really making a concerted and purposeful effort by providing one-on-one coaching. That one-on-one coaching is so critical because that helps to move teachers to the next level by using high-yield art strategies. From the professional development survey we received, 3 out of 4 teachers, after experiencing our professional development curriculum, changed the way they're thinking about teaching and learning. And that is awesome, because we're trying to create better best practices for teachers. And we all know in this room that the arts work. And so for teachers who may not necessarily think of themselves as an artist, they're actually thinking, hey, I am, you know? And I can help my students really engage and learn the content in a really visceral way. And you know, that really helps to progress our student achievement. So it's a combination of really high quality professional development, working together with our arts communities to develop that together, thinking through job embedded coaching on that one-to-one face contact hour level. And it's really thinking about the community artists in our organization. How are they working to help impact our students? And that has been aligned, and that's been one of the beauties of working on a collective impact model is how does this work sustain? The district has committed money. It's in our general budget, and so every year they've been able to say yes. And I have been very fortunate to where we have not experienced a cut. And we are also facing a deficit. So that just speaks to the huge value of what we're doing and the wonderful work that collective impact has allowed us to do is really think through what is necessary for us to continue the work. And it's advocacy, and I'll wrap it up right now.
I love that. So let's, come on. So let's come to Seattle, just to begin.
Sure.
Size of the Seattle School District?
52,000.
Okay, and that's so a little bit smaller,
than
Austin and Boston,
yeah.
but not dissimilar. And you guys have a little bit of a twist on the collective impact model. The work is collectively held, but you've got a sort of distributed responsibility, distributed leadership model.
Yeah.
Talk about your guys' take on
The
this.
little city that could. First, I just want to say I'm really grateful to be on this panel this morning with these incredible women who are doing really powerful and necessary work in our community, so thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here this morning. This is really exciting. I was really honored to be invited to be part of this conversation. And I'm going to keep this brief because I would like for us to have an iterative dialogue, and you'd be able to ask us some questions and hear what's priority for you and your communities. Again, my name is Lara, and I'm from Seattle. I'm the Arts Education Manager for the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, so that's city bureaucracy. And I work, so it's a different perspective, which I think is an important one when we talk about these different kinds of collective impact models. I work on what's called the Creative Advantage. It's our citywide arts education initiative to reinvest in arts education for all students, K-12, in our local district. It stems off of a long-term partnership between the city's Arts Commission, and Seattle Public Schools. And back in 2011, we garnered the attention of the Wallace Foundation. They invested money for us to develop a plan. That plan allowed us to talk to over 2,000 stakeholders in our community. So this is teaching artists and community partners, this is young people, this is parents to really input and develop what this plan could be. Moving forward, Wallace Foundation, just to be honest, did not invest in the implementation. They decided not to invest in the implementation of our work. They're a research organization, and they wanted to look at cities who were doing things in a more similar manner. So in Seattle, we were like, well, we have all these people on board, folks are invested, the community is about it, partners are about it, young people are about it, schools are about it, so we're gonna figure it out. At the same time, you wanna talk about change, our fiscal agent dissolved. So they were going to initially be hold elements of our backbone organization. So we lost them as well. We didn't get the implementation money as we planned. But what happened was the city and the school district stepped up and said, we're going to put the money into place so that we can launch this initiative, start smaller, but do it in a more intentional way. So we have all the functionalities of any given backbone organization, but they're, again, distributed amongst the partners in a different way. The city is really supporting the overall evaluation, our longitudinal database, and looking at what's the impact of our work. We're supporting aligned and coordinated partnerships with individual teaching artists and organizations. The school is overseeing regional planning and school-based planning, increased certificated arts instruction in music and dance, and we're working really collaboratively on long-term strategies to unlock public funding to support our partners ongoingly in this work, and also to get our local philanthropy community on board. Interestingly enough, Seattle has a lot of philanthropic money. We're talking about like Gates, we're talking about Allen, we're talking about all these different entities, but we don't have money that's directed towards public education. And there's a lot of innovative work that we're doing, I think, within this partnership that could be something that's definitely attractive to that field, especially when you think about, I heard recently that creative industries is like 3.1% of the GDP. We talk about Seattle, we have a huge tech sector, we have a huge creative industry. So having that support for this work, especially when it comes to our secondary students, access to connecting to careers to the arts, which is something that they asked for during the planning process, is crucial. So I'm excited about the work that we're doing in Seattle. It's constantly shifting, but I think the benefit of having something that looks a little bit different is that we have had to, within the district and within the city, really think about what it is that our institutions need to do in order to shift to make systemic change, right? Because if we're talking about a larger agenda, fundamentally changing systems, that's what you said earlier, we have to have those people who are inside those systems, who have power, who have influence, thinking about how to do things differently if we're really going to make a change and have it be equitable. So it's challenging on one hand, I'll be honest, this is the last thing I'll say and then we can talk, to really push and advocate from inside bureaucracies where your hands are much more tied, right? We need that community voice, we need to build public will, we need those outside rebel rousers to hold both the district and the city accountable. So internally, we are supporting teachers and principals and helping to build up their desire to have a culture of arts and arts education present. So I will say that's sort of the thing that we work on that we don't have because we don't have a backbone organization. But internally, the work, the way that it's being held, and the way that is changing the internal systems of the district and the city is really powerful.
That's great. Okay. And just quickly, what do your numbers look like at the elementary level for students?
In terms of?
Of arts education access.
Yeah, so we just released our baseline report last year and then into our current report to look at the impact of this work in the last 2 years because we're just in one pathway. Right. So that data is still forthcoming.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. But no, I was just curious because yesterday there was a lot of conversation that it's your fault that our orchestras look the way they do because we're not delivering enough arts education. But wait a minute. But I heard that in Boston, 97% of our students are receiving their arts education.
And
I heard that in Austin, 100% of our students are receiving arts education. So the problem's about to be fixed. Good news from SphinxCon, right? All right, well, so I want to take, I'm being, I think you know what I'm saying. We'll do Ayanna and then we'll come right here. And if there are any other questions, we'll stack up a couple, take them quickly, and then
I just want to highlight a couple of things that were mentioned. So one of the things you asked Yesenia was about dealing with changing leadership. And I just want to emphasize that point because superintendents, principals are constantly turning over. Even mayors are turning over. City elected officials are turning over. So the importance of collective impact is having the broadest, diverse, most cross-sector set of leaders, and community members a part of this. To not just advocate, but to express this is the expectation. And that's what I meant earlier when I said it so integrates and weaves arts education into the fabric of a community, into the fabric of a school district, because so many people have had a voice at the table and see themselves in their work in a citywide, district-wide plan that is, it really, at that point, is not an option because there's so much personal investment in the work. And I also just wanted to highlight, we were talking about backbone organizations, which is one of the 5 conditions of collective impact that I mentioned earlier. And you'll see here from what everyone articulated that there's really a different model in each community. And one of the things I mentioned earlier about collective impact is that the power of it is that you really customize it to your local community. So you mentioned Mind Pop, which was a new nonprofit organization established specifically to coordinate and manage the work taking place in Austin. In Boston, we have Advestors, which was an existing organization that assumed the leadership and the coordination. And then in Seattle, we know it's a hybrid model really shared between the City Office of Cultural Affairs as well as the school district. So I just want to emphasize those points in terms of it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all model and totally customizable. But One of the things that John Kania from FSG mentioned on the webinar that's archived on the NEA's website is that this work he has not seen this work be successful without a backbone organization in place. And that's one of the things I get asked all the time, well, what does that look like? It looks different in every community, and it's based on the strengths and the unique assets of your particular community.
Excellent. All right, we're going to switch into lightning round mode. We're going to stack these 4 questions, comments, and then we're going to come to these folks. So hit it.
Hi, my name is Casey Stratton. I'm the Director of Performing Arts for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have 3 locations. It's our 4th school year having a performing arts program, which is not required by the National Boys and Girls Club, so I'm happy that we're going above and beyond. We started the first year with 226 unduplicated members. Last year we had 426, so we've grown quite a bit. One of our challenges in the after-school model is that the kids don't have to be there, but I think it's also an opportunity because we can take arts education that kids do get in the schools, which unfortunately we don't have the kind of numbers that you're talking about in Grand Rapids, Michigan yet. But we can take kids who have school education and we can take a step further for the kids that are really resonating with that and give them access to more high-yield arts activities. But one of the biggest challenges I find when I'm working on proposals is measurable outcomes. How to write that into a grant, how to measure that. On the local and regional level, we hear a lot of surveys. To have them take a survey, but honestly, kids are so over-surveyed. They're over-tested, they're over-surveyed, they're tired of it, they don't tell the truth. Or, they're like, or they say, give them a piece of pizza if they take the survey, but, whatever. And then 2, if I start talking about measurable outcomes that are, let's say, music, I start talking about musical theory and people's eyes start to glaze over because they don't understand what that means either. And then 3, proficiency is not always the goal. Even though I love to see musical or theatrical or dance proficiency, the goal is persistence, the goal is grit, and the goal is feeling successful about yourself, which might not necessarily churn out more professional musicians, but it certainly churns out more people who are interested in being the audience, which I'm glad we touched on today. So it also kind of goes with what Ayanna was saying, not one-size-fits-all model, and I'm going to wrap up. My question is, what are best practices for measurable outcomes in the arts that are so subjective?
Excellent. Thank you so much. Come over here. Lightning round.
First of all, after 30, 40, 50 years, my name is Fred Child from American Public Media. After 30, 40, 50 years of horror stories about cuts in arts education, it's so inspiring to see and hear individuals like the 4 of you, powerful, visionary individuals in decision-making positions. So thank you to the 4 of you for the work that you're doing. I have questions for all of you, but I'll hold it to one and I'll find you later. Ms. Parker-Brass, you mentioned some numbers about arts education, incredible changes in those numbers in Boston. Do you happen to know the numbers of students who have access to music education in particular?
Great.
I do.
Do you want to just say it super quick?
Sure. So currently we have 14,000 of our students who are engaged in that K through 8 music, and 2,600 of our high school students that are either in an orchestra, band, general music, AP, et cetera.
Excellent.
And that's
Thanks
out of
so much.
58,000?
58,000.
Great. Thanks so much. Right over here.
My name is Jeremy Johnson. I am the interim director of the Newark Arts Council, and we're thrilled that we were the recipient of, through our Newark Arts Education Roundtable, of a Collective Impact Award from the NAA. So thank you. My question is a lot of talk about leadership and changing roles of superintendents. How would you all speak about the role of the arts community and the selection of those superintendents? We are a state takeover district in Newark. There's some changes going on. How do we galvanize that support to make sure our superintendents are as passionate and advocate about the arts and arts education as you are?
Excellent. Last question.
Hi, Deb Pollock from the Arts
Oh,
Alliance.
sorry, 2. We have 2. Sorry.
Oh, not me too.
Yeah.
Great. Deb Pollock from the Arts Alliance of the Greater Ann Arbor area, just west of here by about 40 miles. Very exciting panel for us. We are the backbone organization in the Greater Ann Arbor area. We have an interesting education model. There are 47,000 students in the county, but 9 different school systems within that county. And we are working towards doing what you're doing, and we'll be launching here in the next few months a project we're calling ACES, Arts and Cultural Education Integration for Student Excellence. And So the models that you ladies have just presented are very exciting to us. We aspire to achieve what you've done at some point, but it's quite a challenge when you're working with 9 different school systems. And fortunately, we have an intermediate school district that is helping us do this, and they're our partner in this endeavor. The question I have for you, as much as we completely get the community engagement, the community action teams, the teachers, the schools, the community arts and cultural organizations, the teaching artists, one of the things that I'm finding and have found throughout my career that kind of misses, or maybe anyway, kind of misses to me, is that what's happening on the educating the educator basis, what's happening on the university levels in ingraining with teachers the importance of arts education and making it more comfortable for them to adapt and adopt this and making it part of their everyday lesson plans in the classroom. So my question is that, do you know of great models? Is there initial work that we need to be doing as those backbone organizations getting into the university levels to, in fact, change that system?
Excellent. Last comment, super fast, because I'm going to get in trouble. They'll take away my honorarium.
I promise.
I'm not getting an honorarium.
So you spoke a lot about community engagement, and so I'm Lauren from the Victoria Foundation in Newark, New Jersey, and we support the roundtable that's housed at the Arts Council. Jeremy just asked a question. And so I think we've done a great job at the roundtable of bringing on the school district and having the right school leaders, the mayor's office, philanthropy. But I think an area of growth is around engaging more deeply parents and students themselves. They are the constituents for this work. And so I'm interested in how you all addressed both parents, community members broadly, and young people and the students you serve in the work that you were doing and in the plans you created.
Great question.
That's excellent. All right, so now comes the impossible bit. So I want you guys to think about the ignite to action, right? We want people to go home and do something different. We want them to leave here knowing something new. And we've heard questions about, we're dealing in a world of collective impact and philanthropy where we have to have measurable outcomes versus a world in which students are over-tested. I've heard a question about how do we as an arts community inform the process of selecting the leadership for the education system? How do we participate in superintendents? I've heard what a complex system delivers education. It's a system of systems. We have school-based decision-making, district-based decision-making, statewide decision-making. I heard a question about professional development, teacher training. How do we provide people with both the skills and the appetite? How do we think about parents and students as our customers? How do we actually do a customer-centric model of education? So thinking about these things, thinking about the audience we have here, thinking about going home and doing something different. In 30 seconds, give me a big thought. Ayanna, I'll start with you.
Okay.
Yours has to be best because you're last.
First of all, these are all super great questions, super big ideas, super big issues. And I neglected to say before, all of my contact information is on the arts.gov website. My email, my telephone number. Feel free, call me, be in touch with our team. Any questions about this work, especially if you're interested in pursuing a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, definitely call. But we are also your resource. So in terms of igniting action, contact us, be in touch. I've jotted down some notes. I'm just going to quickly go over these. Okay. One question was about leadership and the changing of leadership, selection of new superintendents. Some models that I've seen, when you have the collective impact model and you have various community leaders as a part of the collective impact cross-sector collaborative, making sure those folks are involved in the interviewing process. I've seen models where it's one-on-one interviews with community leaders. I've seen models where there are community meetings where arts education advocates, supporters have an opportunity to interview different candidates. Ensuring that the school board is a part of the collective impact initiative and is raising this as an issue or an expectation for a new superintendent. And again, once you have a plan in place, a set community expectation, then how do you ensure that those conversations are taking place? And so it's making sure that the school board member who's doing the hiring is on board and, again, sets this as an expectation, and that the community has the opportunity and the forum to ask questions and to contribute suggestions, ideas about the process.
Excellent. I'm going to cut you off there just because I'm getting the red light. But HudsonA@arts.gov, right? She can give you all the other answers. Super fast.
A couple others.
You're going to get me fired.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Jamie. A couple others. The university level pre-service piece. There are a couple of models, a couple of resources. Tennessee, Nashville, Metropolitan School District, and Nashville Metropolitan School District. Part of the work that the NEA is funding is partnerships, collaborations with higher education to really address and dive into that pre-service issue. Orange County, their Arts Education Initiative, they're working with Orange County higher education institutions as part of the California State University system. Also, LA County Arts for All, working with higher education institutions. So there are some models out there that are facilitating dialogue and conversation to be able to really drive that conversation at the higher university level to begin to impact the pre-service work.
Excellent. Yesenia, one thought. Don't feel need to do them all. One thought.
Sure. I think not enough can be said about making sure that this is an expectation. This has to be set as an expectation within the community. The community has to have a seat at the table. If you want to ensure that arts are valued in your leadership at the superintendent level, in the board of trustee level, within your city officials, that expectation has to be clear. It also has to be clear with teachers who are getting all of these surveys, we're trying to get metrics. Set that expectation. I have a wonderful model that I'd like to talk to you about later. In the pre-service program, we have a wonderful relationship with the University of Texas at Austin that is churning out teachers in the pre-service program that use arts across the curriculum, that know how to implement this into their program. So expectation, setting those expectations has to be a must. Make sure you've got a vocal member of your community at the table. If they're not at the table, they're not going to be on the menu. Okay?
Vocal and at the table.
Yes,
I love it.
they gotta be at
Myran,
the table.
one big thought.
So can I break it into three different little thoughts? So
Tiny
for
thoughts.
the engaging parents and students, so we have, every year we do a survey of all our parents and of our students to ask them what they consider quality arts education. For our parents, what that looks like in a school. If I'm choosing a school, what does that look like? And for our students, what do they want? What do they want in their schools? So I'm happy to share that with you. For our superintendent search, and we just went through one, we were fortunate to have questions in the packet that was asked of the superintendent candidates about arts education, their support of arts education, and what that looked like, where they were coming from. And in addition, our mayor, who actually is the last line on the superintendent, was very supportive about what arts education looks like. For the higher ed, we have just engaged in a memo of understanding with our higher ed institutions in Boston. We have lots who are teacher trainers, both arts trainers and regular classroom teachers. And so I'm happy to share that because it does talk about how do we build out not only for arts education, but teaching our teachers how to teach in an urban setting. And so I'm happy to share that. And for the assessment of after-school programs, our organizations that work with us are in the process now of creating this common evaluation method that they're going to be using. So I'm happy to share all of that with anybody.
Awesome. Thank you. Lara, bring us home.
I would say get real about equity in your work. This isn't just about plugging young people into a construct that currently exists. What is it that they have access to? So we need to be going to the teaching artists, the community arts partners, the folks who've been helping to hold down this gap in arts education for the last 30 years. It's not just the city and the district who are the leaders in this work. So how are we building it with them? How are we showing up with our youth-led and youth-serving organizations who are really rooted in social justice and partnering with them to really define what this can be? So get serious about equity. Just don't say equity inclusion. What does that mean at every single level, from the development of the plan to who's at the table, to who gets to implement it, to what it looks like, to how it evolves over time.
Exactly. Excellent. All right. So shockingly, we're going to do another 5-minute break. You're all going to come back super fast, but give them all one more round of thanks.